Welcome to World Childless Week. And today we're having a conversation about being childless and single. And I'm talking with my friend and colleague, Catherine-Emmanuelle Delisle. She's in Montreal, Canada, and she is a therapist for relationship assistance and the founder of Femmes Sans Enfants. I've known Catherine-Emmanuelle. I met her back in 2015 at the first Not Mom Summit in Cleveland, Ohio. And we have continued having the most fascinating conversations over the course of our relationship. So welcome, Catherine-Emmanuelle.
Thank you, Kate. Welcome to you too. So happy to be chatting with you today. And I want to introduce Kate to you as the author, the brilliant author of Do You Have Kids? Life When the Answer is No. So, Kate, we are talking about being single. And what is fascinating about what we're about to talk is that we used to be both single women, and then a few, I guess, months ago, the situation has changed. Can you explain what happened in your life?
Well, I can. And it's so funny when you say it's changed because relationships are dynamic, and I have been seeing someone for a number of months now, and it appears that it's evolving into a more stable, ongoing kind of a relationship that moves from dating into, dare I say, a partnership,
Mhm.
which is so what we're going to talk about is I shared that with Catherine-Emmanuelle when we had our first conversation about what we wanted to talk about today.
Mhm.
And there was a moment when I mentioned that shifting reality for me, that because she is so brilliant, she had the courage to call it out. And we decided that we would talk about that moment. And
Yeah.
Catherine-Emmanuelle, can you talk a little bit about what that was like from your side?
Well, actually, when we prepared this conversation, when we just shared some ideas about it, the first thing that came to my mind when you told me you had met someone and it seemed serious was like, I told myself, okay, so now once again, I'm losing a member of my celibate clan. And now I have to navigate this change and accept this change that is triggering. And that is what single women experience together when there's change in the relationship, when the other person in the relationships meet someone, it changes the relationship. And the first feeling that came up for me is a sense of loss. And childless women know about losing, know about this feeling, present feeling of loss, the feeling of the loss of the idea of the family that we had created in our minds. So we face loss in our lives, and then when a relationship with a friend like you is changing, it seemed to be triggering for me these feelings of loss. That is the first thing that came to my mind. So it was triggering. And then we talked about a space where we needed to redefine the place of our relationships in our lives, in both our lives. So accepting this uncomfortable space, because it's not only uncomfortable for me, it's uncomfortable for you, see, you know?
It is. And when you say triggering, I know when I was thinking, I think I need to come out about this, because you're in a new relationship and it feels tenuous, and it's like, do I actually call it this? Can I trust it? And so it's triggering for all of those fears and concerns I have internally, because of course I'm coming from the same place of, I know how painful it can be to have change happen. I know how anxiety provoking it is.
Mhm.
And I have been very aware of my own personal anxiety about accepting what is, celebrating what is, while also being aware that it creates a shift. So you talked about triggers and what those triggers are. And I've been sitting with, what is it triggering with me?
Mhm.
And what I realized is there's a sense of it's kind of like shame, but and anxiety, as I mentioned. But it's like I'm leaving the status quo that I have relaxed into, and I'm introducing change, which usually I'm the recipient of change.
Mhm.
Ending a long marriage, having the shifting of all these friendships that used to be coupled friendships, and some I lost, and some showed me different ways of being. And what I realized, I mean, certainly there's the guilt, there's the wondering, what is my sweet spot with the people I care about, and I'm not willing to let go, because this is who I am in the world.
Mhm.
And so what it triggered for me was, I think, the same place, because of course I've been on the other side of, oh yeah, okay, well now I'm losing my friend, and I've got
Mhm.
this other entity coming in, and it's much more complex than if someone gets a new pet or something. It's, but it's a presence, and how does that all work? So that's what we thought we'd talk about. And I love that we have the courage, just like when we talked about sex last year.
Yeah.
We seem to be willing to go into this space. And so we're doing that meta thing. So we're having the conversation, but we're aware that we're watching ourselves having this conversation. And now we're offering it out into the world.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling a little anxious right now as well.
Mhm.
But I'm also feeling very strongly supported, because we've declared that our relationship matters.
Mm. Yeah. Which makes a big difference, because it's creating a space of trust and respect and openness to hear what our mutual triggers are.
Mhm.
And it's important for me to be transparent and to not to have shame around my triggers, which I would love to go into details with. Like when you told me that, if I go deeper into this triggering spot for me, it triggered a feeling of abandonment, feeling like I'm now replaced, I'm less than. It triggered also, oh no, not again. Uh, this feeling of loss, of shame, this area where I fall into victim mode, where I fall into a bad look on myself, like feeling like a loser, or feeling like I'm not the one that is chosen once again. And it triggered also a feeling of injustice. So you can see, I'm just sharing this openly because I want women not to be ashamed about these feelings. The problem, I think, is not having these feelings. The problem is staying alone with these feelings and not sharing them in relationship with a friend like you that is experiencing a change towards the way out of singleness. So you expressed your triggers. Do you want to briefly, but you want to go deeper into those? I would be interested.
Well, this is the thing I just realized, I think it was yesterday, that the triggers are the same triggers that, I mean, I know these things on, I don't know as much on the side I'm on now as I do from the side of the loss and the triggering. And I realized it's going to the exact same place of when I heard that friends were going to have a child. Of course, I'm happy for them. And I'm not happy for me that I can't join them. That was one of the impetuses that got me going. It was the same thing as when, before that, when girlfriends would partner with someone. My best friend was single for a long time. And she didn't like the guy that I married. And she never didn't include that in our friendship, which opened the doors for us. And she happens to be child free, and it opened the doors for us, not right away, but later on, to be able to have some conversations that, oh my God, particularly as we're aging, have become the sweetest conversations because there's more movement back and forth. But the other time circumstance that I found was when some of my younger friends would have kids, and everything shifted and they were gone. And then when my contemporaries were becoming grandparents, which completely caught me unawares. And so all of this, I'm realizing I'm sitting more in the space of, I'm sitting here hugging myself. I'm sitting in the space of being the one who is in the, what I understand is an impermanent state of being, looking for the sympathetic joy from people who care about me, and recognizing that it's complicated. I'm having lunch today with a young friend who's going through a divorce. So she's going into the thing that I've spent the last, 9 years after a long marriage ended. So it's different, but it's the same. It's the same in the same theater. I know this play.
Yeah. And like you said, like we talked before preparing this interview, we talked about the importance on both parts of accepting impermanence and change, and all that it is bringing happiness and difficulties, and a change in ourselves and change in relationships.
Yes.
But this takes great courage, as you know, my friend, and vulnerability, because it brings us in a liminal space, in a space we don't know what it's made of, because we have to recreate a new territory for our relationship.
Exactly. And while we're talking about impermanence, something I'm very aware of is I'm 70 years old. I just turned 70 this year, and I'm walking into this intimacy knowing full well, if it lasts, what it will end with is the death of one person or the other. And so it's like walking right into it. Talk about vulnerables, like really is this it? So what I like about recognizing that is different than 40, however many years ago it was that I met the person that I married. I have the stupidest thing I could ever do would be to get into one of those situations where it's all focused on one person, that's foolhardy. We already know how important our relationships are, particularly with people who don't have children. And I'm constantly reinforcing that for myself. And I think every time we face one of these transitions, I don't know if your friends are having grandkids yet. I suspect not,
Yeah.
but it's around the corner. And
Yeah.
and so I love the way you said we're kind of recreating what this is, and how do we do this? And we're improvising
Yeah.
how we do this.
Actually, we told when we were discussing this that there's a status to the relationship that has to be declared at one point, meaning that if the relationship is important enough for both of us, there will be a decision that will be made on both parts. And you said it brilliantly. You said, we will reweave it, leave it, or grieve it, which I find was brilliant. So if we chose to reweave it, then there won't be any rupture in the relationship. But if we choose to leave it, it will be because of many reasons. But we have to be very careful because before we leave the relationship, because we feel both we could be running away from something. So carrying some assumptions that were not important enough to have this relationship continue, or being defensive about what is happening, would be kind of a short way out of the relationship. So it has to be discussed at one point. Okay, this is hard. This is challenging. And do we want to go in that vulnerable space where we're gonna try to create a second version of that relationship?
Yes, Catherine-Emmanuelle and Kate, two dot.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and I like how you brought up the reweave it or leave it and the grieving, and something that you and we think about this stuff all the time. We all the impacts that not having kids has on our life and on our relationships. And one of the things that I think comes in the middle of that time, because with you and I have had what now maybe three conversations. This is our third conversation, because on purpose, it's like we are having this live time. This is not all scripted out and everything. The in between of the reweaving and the leaving is some sort of kind of a, not necessarily a timeout, but a stepping back and regrouping and taking care. Because I think what any relationship requires is a letting down of our protections. And when we're triggered, what do? We put up all our protections. And so I think that in between time, I have appreciated having, I think we've had a week between each conversation. And I will use that as a model with others of my friends, as I'm trying to integrate this life that's had a shift in circumstances. I don't know how it works. Yeah.
yes, and coming back to the grieving part, if you choose in a relationship, people that are watching us, to leave it and then to grieve it, well, you have actually experience in the grieving process, which doesn't make it easier. I don't want to say banalize
Yeah.
it, and it can be it can make you feel also sad to grieve another thing in your life, to grieve, yes, another relationship, and to deal with another loss. So before leaving it, I think there's some work to be done if the relationship is important enough.
Yes, and I think that's why that whole concept of impermanence that we talked about is so important, because all of these different milestone type things, they just keep happening. It's who we are as people, and then we die. We're getting very Buddhist about the whole thing. But I think there's a real skill, and I will go so far as to say that I think particularly for those of us who wanted kids and we didn't have them, and I would add people who have had other tragedies in their lives, who have lost people over other circumstances, suicides, illness, all of these circumstances, and many of us have many layers of those. It's almost like a front end loading of building skills that we never want to build. We just don't want to build these skills, but we have them. And if we befriend them and if we recognize them, which requires a level of emotional maturity that not everybody can play with us. And so that leaving part of it, the reweaving it or leaving it. I mean, I had a friend who, when I first mentioned this circumstance of this new person in my life, she's like, well, the Kate I know wouldn't have done this and wouldn't have done that and wouldn't have done that. And I thought, okay, that's a little harsh, because I am still the Kate, but you don't know me like this. And as somebody who hasn't been in my life for that long, and I think that friendship is a casualty. Yeah. So and I think it's because I think there's not the mutual commitment to do the work to create that shift in what the relationship looks like.
Yes, and
Yeah.
let's engage in that, because we wanted also to discuss what are the behaviors of reciprocity. What do they look like?
Say more about that.
So actually, the behavior that we have to have together to construct this new relationship. So the first ones we thought of when we discussed this is to have honest discussions together, and to let us feel vulnerable, unprotected with each other about our feelings.
Mhm.
Like we talked in the beginning of this interview. So
Mhm.
accepting it in both parts. There was also to have the knowledge that we are both trying our best around the triggers, not assuming the other person is not, well, she's not participating, she's not contributing, she's not doing our best. No, just assume we're both doing our best in co-creating this new space, which includes the importance of allowing ourselves to be vulnerable.
Because what's in it for each of us? This thing about triggers, I am really becoming more convinced that what triggers do, yes, they indicate that we need some protection, but they also show where our our learning edges are, where our vulnerabilities are, that if we have the courage to walk into those, we have the potential to shift and change those, so that then either they become more neutralized, or we start to look at them in a little bit different way. And I'm flashing on something, I don't even remember where I learned it from, but it was, we all have those things that we have the immediate visceral reaction to something. Let's just use an example. Somebody comes and cuts you off when they're in the car and they're speeding past you, and you go, "What's wrong with you, you fool?" And then someone told me this: come up with an equally plausible reaction. Oh, their friend fell down and has a nail stuck in their foot, and they're taking them to the emergency room so that they can get the nail taken out of their foot. Okay, look, now I'm not taking this all personally, because it's also almost never really about us except for us. And so to become more curious about how do we navigate this thing, which is why we chose that word, navigating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had mentioned that we talked about improvising, and something that I was remembering about improv is when you're improvising with someone, you take whatever you're getting, and the way it works is you always say yes to what you're getting,
Right.
because that's what keeps it going back and forth. So what is the yes?
And the yes is the new state of the relationship. But before saying yes, you are allowed to say no, to be angry, to be scared, to be disappointed, to be sad, to be anxious, because if you jump too fast to the yes, you're not acknowledging this suffering space that needs attention and love, because triggers, and I say it, and when it happens, I'm not always responsible. I get pissed off and I get angry and I get sad, but it means actually it means the space is wounded, and it needs more care, love, attention, nurturing. And then when that is done, I think there's more room for saying, yes, okay, what next? What is the next phase of this relationship? So not suppressing all these bad feelings is super important in my view, and to be able to share it with the person is super transformating, because it allows both ourselves to be imperfect in our feelings. It's that.
I think that's the biggest yes, is that yes, we each get to have our feelings, we each get to have our experiences, we each get to have our emotions, all the full range of them. And if we can do that in relationship with those people that we consider our chosen family, our friends that we want in our lives, if we keep doing that, and the other person, I think this is where the yes comes in, is that you say, "Oh my God, I'm having a hard time with this." I say, "Yes, I see that. And what do you need now?"
Yeah, exactly.
And then it goes back and forth.
Yeah, you saying what do you need, and also me saying to myself, how do I need to take care of myself? What is the self-care that is needed? That is also an important behavior, because to model, because we can't always expect it to come from the other person. We have to take responsibility for our own feelings. And of course, you can be kind to myself, you can show sympathy, empathy, but we are both responsible of our own wounded spaces, and we have also to engage in self-care separately. And self-care together, that applies to our relationship and creating this new space.
Yeah, because it's like there's your relationship with yourself, my relationship with myself, our relationship with each other, that space we travel through, and we stop there, and sometimes we have to cycle out. So it's like I mean, why did we have 3 conversations about this? Because it kept shifting and changing. And after our first conversation, I was like, okay, there is a lot of stuff for me to think about, to experience, for me to decide how do I want to be in the world, to capture and respond in a way that keeps all of the doors open that I can, and recognizes doors that I can't keep open. We're talking about shame. I'm like, oh man, I just kind of was starting to feel like I was settling into this single thing. And now I'm kind of like, well, what am I doing now? And oh my God, there's some grief. There's some grief with making that shift. And do I have the right to even bring that up? And the fact that I feel it in my mind now says I have the obligation to bring that up. Because if it can't coexist with what's happening with you as my friend, then that's what creates the distancing and the falling apart.
So what is your plan, basically? Did you have a plan in mind on how you, a view? A plan is like more rigid, but you have a view of how you want to integrate this new relationship with your other relationships. Do you have a clear view of that, or is it still a work in progress for you in your head?
Oh, it's totally a work in progress. And I have so many wonderful friends in my life that now I think I've come up with a level of discernment of what a friendship that I can value for life includes.
Okay.
And this kind of a conversation is one of those ingredients that says to me, we're building the muscle that allows us to weather the circumstances that may come up. This kind of conversation gives me the courage to know that if 2 years into the future, I get diagnosed with some horrible disease, heaven help me that I don't, but if I do, that I have an experience with you that says, I get to include that because we've gone through enough experience that that we can do that. And so I went on a camping trip with a couple. Oh, I guess I was the other couple. See, it's still like sitting there.
Yeah.
And 2 single women. And I adore all of those people. And so part of it was, I'm going to go hike on the trail with these people, and then I'm gonna hike with those people, and I'm gonna hike with those people. And so it's like, it's additive, and I want my people that I love to know his name's Dave, to know Dave. And I also want them to know that I'm still here. I'm not all stuffed in a Ziploc bag with this person. I want them to have relationships. One of the women is awesomely into crossword puzzles, and so is he. And they had this whole conversation about crossword puzzles. And she's a writer, and she wrote this really kind of goofy but wonderful short story that, you know, it's his character has come as one of the characters in the story, and a little bit of mine too. Anyway, so it's like, I'm not willing to change the whole mosaic of my of my world and my relationships in order to have a broader scope. So I don't know what it looks like. It is a work in progress, and it will change. And I think I've already lost that one friend, and that's okay with me. That was not as healthy of a friendship. And what I want more than anything is to have healthy friendships. And every time I allow myself to be honest by being vulnerable, I learn something about the person I'm doing it with. And sometimes I don't like what it is, but I get to know what it is.
And you
And
know
so
what?
it's just amazing.
On my part, something came up when I was listening to you. On my part, I tend to have the feeling when you told me you were partnered, the first thing that came to my mind is I feel isolated. I'm isolated once again. And I was just listening to you and I told myself, well, actually, I'm not the only human that experiences this at this point in the world. I can rally myself, think of all the other women like me who don't have children and that are interacting also with friends that are partnered. And thinking about that makes me feel like I'm not the only one experiencing this. And it's okay. And it's part of life. And resisting it in the long run won't help me. Because everything that resists ultimately finishes by breaking. So
Yes.
to think of that in a more global way kind of helps me to think I'm not alone in this. And also, I know I'm not alone with you because you acknowledge. So the acknowledgements of both of our feelings are super important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And are both are states that are different. But it's not, I think it's not helpful to position myself in a space where I feel like I'm isolated, which when I come back to reality, I'm not isolated. I have friends, I have you, I have my parents, I have all the childless women I talk to. And so I think it's a great tool to come back to reality, the reality of our relationship.
Yes, and I think that's where the saying yes and the noticing that, I mean, we really do have experience of being less than. We really do.
Yeah.
And if that is our go-to position, that's a hard road to travel.
Yeah.
To always be yes then, to defer to, I'm going to defer to coupledom, I'm going to defer to the parents, I'm going to defer to the grandparents, I'm going to defer to the babies, I'm going to defer to everyone because of all the things that I have to be less than.
Yeah.
That's not saying yes to oneself. Yeah. And so how do we say yes to oneself in circumstances like this?
Well, in doing this interview together, just accepting to have this discussion, showing up, sharing it with people that will listen to us openly as it is. It's uncleared, it's imperfect, and it's transforming itself along the way as we're speaking. So I think this is the major point that is important. Just accept to lean in this liminal space, new experience, new relationship that we're trying to build. And remember that as we are talking about this, you are not alone. The people that are watching us today have for sure experienced this. And we are still too experiencing it. And we share it in front of you to help you know you're not alone. And once you decided the relationship is important enough, we are tangible people that can, we are an example. I hope we can be an example to you that it is possible to challenge our relationship and to be vulnerable and to be open about change.
I could not agree with you more. And so I had a little note here about airing out options. And we didn't talk about this, but I'm wondering if you would do this. So, like, say you were coming to Portland.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, I can't wait for you to come to Portland, nor can I wait to come to Montreal. And that someday that will happen. And so I say, oh, I'm so excited. I want you to meet my friend Dave. That was
Yes.
really good because your smile went away and then it went right back up. That was something.
Okay, so you see, if you would tell me that right now, you could see it in my face. I'm not ready.
And I could see it because I care about you. I know I put you on the spot.
It's fine. It's okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
At this point, I would not be ready
Yes.
because it feels too vulnerable. And there's also something I want to share with the people that are listening to us is that I had two friends in the last 2 months that shared with me, two other friends that shared with me that they have met someone that is the right fit for them. So
Mhm.
if I were to come to your place like in the next month, it would not be easy for me. It would not be a good timing for me. So that is what I have now the courage to tell you. And this feels transparent for me, and this feels transparent for you.
And it feels very transparent for me. And what that says to me, which actually is my true self, I would much rather have my time with you until such time, unless and until such time arrives that, yeah, I mean, I want my time with you. I just had a friend visit from Ohio. And I was like, I want you sleeping over at my house. I'm getting up at 4 a.m. to take you to the airport. We're having our one-on-one time together. That's how I have my relationships.
Yeah.
And introducing another person, it's like introducing any of my friends. I'd sometimes do that, but oftentimes I don't, because I'm very one-on-one based. And
I actually think it's going to be possible, but I think it will take preparation, mental preparation on both of our parts
agreed,
to
agreed.
do that. And just being open, like Like you could see in my face,
Immediately.
it was not happening. This is not a good idea right now. And just,
Right.
so this is what I think it's a perfect example of vulnerability and just showing up and just don't pretend everything is smooth sailing.
And thank you for playing on that. That was a little bit of a, that was a risky. I thought to myself, no, I'm not going to do this. And I thought, yeah, yes, I am, because it's such a perfect example of what could be. And
Yeah.
I know that we both have the emotional maturity that had that gone way south on either of our parts, but we have the commitment and we have the abilities to circle back and say, whoa, that was hard.
Yeah.
And because I'm watching you and I want to know where you are, and I want you to know where I am. And if we can't shift and change, that's one of those things that, oh, the Kate that I know, it's like, hi, I have many dimensions, most of which I don't even know what they are yet. So let's give each other the latitude to go discover and try. And I think, isn't that what we're saying here? Is just, it takes trying, but more than that, it takes the courage to be honest.
Yeah.
And to accept that sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're going to be hurt. Sometimes we're going to hurt other people. You said it really well before. We get to be flawed human beings,
Yeah.
that make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And we get to come together and we get to heal. We get to repair, whether it's with the other person or by ourselves or with other people that come into our lives or are already in our lives, finding the right places, our safe places.
And finally, I think, to close this wonderful conversation, I think being curious is a way about our feelings, is a way to interact in a more, I think it's a more gentle way of approaching this time of change. Being more curious than afraid, actually.
That's beautiful. And I think that's the bottom line of all of this, being curious about what happens if I actually go to, I mean, there's so many circumstances, family gatherings, baby showers. What happens if I try? I would get curious about if I go for 10 minutes and I get a message, whether I get a message or not, and leaving. I'm just curious how that would work for me. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't go to baby showers anymore. I was curious. I found I liked it way more than sitting through and making myself listen to things that I don't want to listen to. Mm-hmm. And I found that many, many, many people don't go to baby showers. And God, when it's grand baby showers, like, it's what we're all doing. And you've done such a beautiful job of people recognizing all the people that are out here, because I love that you and I have the capacity to have these deep conversations, and I forget that we have the whole world out there here. And so I completely agree with being curious. I cherish you. I cherish your abilities, your skills. I cherish who you are as a person. And that's what matters the most to me. Always has and always will.
Thank you, Kate. Same here, my friend.
I know, my friend.
So thank you, everybody, for spending time with us. And let's stay connected, Kate, because we have decided we're not leaving this relationship.
Nope, we're recreating and shifting and navigating. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kate.